I'm Barak Turovsky. I'm executive in residence at Scale Venture Partner, a leading enterprise VC firm focused on AI. And I'm not a big connoisseur of coffee. I just prepare a cappuccino using a machine.
So there is something that you kind of talked about there. On one hand, everyone needs to remember that infamous blog post that is, "You are not Google." But on the other hand, I would love to hear what you, as a product owner, what you think about when you are looking at these new applications that are coming out. And as you mentioned, there's a big difference between making a Twitter demo, like an auto GPT that blows up and gets a ton of stars. But then when people actually use it and try and use it in production, it's like, dude, this is not working. And that can go for any kind of app right now, or any use of these LLMs, and how we can mitigate some of these big questions and trade-offs that we have. One being costs. That's huge, right? And then the other one that you mentioned is latency. And so if you are trying to do this at scale and really have a battle-hardened, bulletproof LLM ops pipeline, what are you looking at and how are you thinking of that? And especially also, just to add another question onto the infinitely long question, how do you see other companies doing this well?
First of all, I think it goes back to my framework, is that people should be realistic what can be achieved and start with use cases that I would call them easier than harder use cases. Because if you're trying to shoot for the stars and saying, I'll replace Google search, right? That's very difficult. LLMs might take 10 years to get there because there is always, the Pareto principle that in productizing something, you sometimes spend 80 to 90% of the work to optimize for 5% of the use cases. So, for example, reducing hallucinations, it might take literally 10 years to get from 90% accuracy, from 90% to 95%, and that might not be enough because on search you might need 99% accuracy. On the flip side, if you start with creative use cases, writing a movie script, you might be totally fine with 80% accuracy, right? And 20% hallucination is less of an issue. So I think, first of all, you need to be realistic what use cases you should focus on, right? That's the first thing. And then there are still a ton of topics that you mentioned. One of them, back to the use cases, is that like latencies and cost. Believe it, guess what? Even on those, you should focus on easier use cases, because many use cases, latency is less of an issue. It is a huge issue in search because people expect instant answers. So you need very high accuracy, probably means larger models, bigger cost, and you need very low latency, and very, very high freshness, meaning in search you need super fresh results. Otherwise, there's a ton of search queries that are influenced by fresh results. And guess what? Fresh results have much more abilities to either being hallucinated or being influenced by bots or whatever. If tomorrow, Trump was addicted, or Trump announced he will running for president, you can have a ton of bots that will completely pollute your results, right? And it's not even hallucination; it's for real something not fully correct. If you go to use cases of please create a draft email for me. You probably can wait, maybe even an hour you can wait. So latency is not as rigid. As I said, accuracy results are not that critical, etc. So the first and foremost, I think, classical rule, focus on use cases that are achievable. And then even on those use cases, there's a ton of work, because you need to make sure also even the point of, open-ended NLU-based input. It sounds very cool. Oh, let me allow people to say whatever they want. But what I discovered in my many years, for example, working on speech, is that our language is extremely rich and it's awesome, but it's also extremely open-ended and ambiguous. And I always give people this example of, if you were a witness of a crime scene, you call to a police station, they describe the suspect, I cannot describe, I cannot draw. Don't worry, let me bring you a police sketch artist. He will help you draw this person. And then you suddenly discover he's asking you these questions. There is, 15 types of eyebrows and 15 types of ears and 15 types of eyes and 40 types of noses. And then it becomes very complex. So in many cases, when you give people a lot of choice to express themselves, it's awesome, but it also complicates the product solution. In many cases, you actually need to provide people easy to use either toggles or, UI choices, like shorter versus longer story, visual versus textual story, casual versus professional. So a lot of the things can also be simplified. There is still a ton of things to be figured out there, but my big advice to people, and I think we can also talk about the industries where I believe that will be disrupted, focus on use cases that LLMs are good fit today versus use cases that LLMs could be a good fit tomorrow, because there's potentially a very long road to make it happen.